Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Scot Goes Pop. My name is James Kelly, and we have the weekly GB-wide opinion poll from YouGov, which is of more interest to us than most other GB-wide polls because the Scottish subsample in YouGov polls is correctly structured and weighted. So apart from the small sample size, it gives us a better idea of the true state of play. So we'll start with the GB-wide figures. Reform UK are on 27% of the Britain-wide vote. That is down 2 points on last week. Labour are on 21%. That's down 1 point. The Conservatives are unchanged on 17%. The Liberal Democrats are up 1 to 15%. The Greens are unchanged on 11%. The SNP are unchanged on 3%, and Plaid Cymru are unchanged on 1%. And in the Scottish subsample, the SNP are in a commanding first place on 39% of the vote. Labour are in second place this week. They're not always in second place. They're sometimes behind Reform UK, but they are in a very distant second place on 15%, with Reform UK on 14% in third place. The Liberal Democrats in fourth place on 13%. The Conservatives behind the Liberal Democrats, as they often are these days, on 11%, and the Greens on 5%. So that's yet another in this string of really good subsample results that the SNP have been having since the Hamilton by-election. But this is unusually good. It's better than the average of results since the Hamilton by-election. And it really is incredible how little effect that by-election defeat has had on the SNP. If you were sort of a visitor from a foreign or an alien planet, you would almost think that it's helped the SNP. It's hard to see how that could possibly be the case, but they seem to have been doing better since the Hamilton by-election rather than worse. To turn to a different but slightly related subject, last night when I was on YouTube, I happened to stumble across a short video from the Holyrood Sources podcast. You might remember I was at the live event run by Holyrood Sources a few weeks ago in Edinburgh. And in this video, Andy Maciver was giving his reaction to John Swinney's new strategy for independence, the full text of it. And he was saying how shocked he was that John Swinney would be crazy enough to set an impossible target of the SNP winning a single party overall majority in the Scottish Parliament without any other pro-independence parties counting towards the mandate. And it was almost uncanny that Andy Maciver it's just coincidence, but he was using almost exactly the same words that I've been using about it. He kept saying that John Swinney can read opinion polls like everybody else, that he's a very intelligent man, and that he knows as well as anybody else that the SNP are not going to win a single party majority. And so he was saying that this must mean one of two things, either that John Swinney had taken leave of his senses and thought that somehow the SNP are going to claw back 15 percentage points between now and next May, or that he was, in quotes, accepting the fact that independence is off the agenda. But it's not that. That's not what John Swinney is doing. He's not accepting a fact that independence is off the agenda. He's creating a reality. He's creating that reality himself that independence would be off the agenda. Because think about effectively the choice of two futures that the SNP will face at their annual conference, because you have the John Swinney proposal for trying to get an SNP overall majority to push for a referendum and to say that only that will do as a mandate for a referendum, or the rebel strategy, which is to use the election as a de facto referendum on the list vote and use all pro-independence parties to count towards the mandate and try to win an outright majority mandate for independence. One of those two is achievable and the other one is not, and you know which way round it is. You can't get the SNP to the kind of level of support it would need to win an overall majority for independence, but it is possible. It's arguably a long shot, but it is undoubtedly possible to get a majority for pro-independence parties combined on the list vote. To do that, the SNP vote on the list would have to recover a bit. They'd have to get back into the 30s, but I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility. It's not a ludicrous target to set by any means. You would need the Greens well into the teens, and you would need a small contribution from some of the smaller parties who aren't going to win any seats. Alba, Liberate Scotland, they'll be taking a sort of minimal share of the vote. They won't be winning any seats, but that could be enough to make the difference between independents getting over the 50% or just falling short of that. And if you can imagine the difference between the two effects of one strategy or the other, you follow John Swinney's advice, You set yourself the target, only a majority for the SNP will do, and that would be a mandate for a referendum, and you fall short of it. Independence is well off the agenda for the next 5 years. Or you go for the outright mandate on independence. It's tough, but you might win that mandate against the odds. Then you have an outright majority for independence. Then you have a mandate, and then everything changes, and it's not off the agenda. It is bang right on again. So that's the difference between these two strategies. Why does John Swinney prefer the wrong strategy? That's the question. Well, it might be that he actually wants to shut the independence issue down, and that might actually be his preference. He might want to say, well, look, we have tried our utmost to get a realistic mandate, the sort of mandate that the UK government could not ignore. And look, we've fallen so far short of that. That shows how far away we are from winning the trust that is necessary from the Scottish people. And we have to get back to the real world and start building that support. It's a long process, but that's what we have to get back to and stop living in cloud cuckoo land. That could be his comfort zone. He may actually prefer to sort of engineer that situation, and he would be engineering it because there's no need to get themselves into that mess. I think there's possibly an element of truth in that, but I think it's more than that. I think he's seen, like everybody else has, the gap that's opened up suddenly over the last couple of years between independent support and SNP support. And he's realised that if he can start linking the achievement of independence, if he can make independence an urgent goal, if he can start talking it up again and then make the achievement of it, if you can link that in the public mind to voting for the SNP and for the SNP only, you can see how that's going to increase the share of the vote for the SNP and increase the number of seats they would win. Well, they'll lose seats, but they'll win more seats than they otherwise would have done, in his view. And okay, that may well be a workable strategy for helping to boost the SNP at this election and helping the SNP to do well. But it's not paying enough care to the fact that it's severely damaging the independence cause by setting a target that is not going to be met and then automatically putting independence onto the back burner for a very long period of time, possibly indefinitely. What it effectively does is it uses independence as a tool, as sort of treasure, as fuel to help the SNP to win an election. Independence is merely a means to an end, and SNP success is an end in itself. You don't think beyond that. You don't care about the damage it's doing to independence as a cause. Whereas most SNP members, I would suggest, think it should be the other way around. And you should be using the SNP as a tool. You should be using the SNP's capital to contribute to a combined pro-independence effort to win an outright majority for independence, including other parties. And if you get to that target, then it actually doesn't matter if some damage is done to the SNP. The important thing is winning a mandate for independence. And then, it puts John Swinney on the spot if that mandate is won, and he would actually have to do something to try and turn that mandate into reality. But that's what we elect our politicians to do, our SNP leaders to do the hard work to actually deliver Scottish independence, particularly if there is a mandate for it. And that's just what he would have to do. And it's if he's not comfortable with that, if he would rather just independence just fell into our laps, then he's in the wrong job, because politics doesn't work that way. Anyway, just leave you with that thought. That's it for now. And if you're enjoying this content, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll see you later.